Hello. Today I'm going to tie for you a Caddis Pupa. I was originally going to tie a sparkle caddis, kind of like Gary LaFontaine's sparkle caddis pupa merger. And I had this cute little trick that I was going to show you guys how I do it, where I take the antron yarn and use a bodkin, kind of come in behind the hook and fold it around, use distribution wraps and make that little bubble. But after further review, and when you look on the internet, this is what I really want to make. So I switched gears mid video and I'm making this up from scratch. So this is the first time through. That's the finished product. And I'll show you how I made it. Now I had several ideas about how I was going to create that detached body. And after about 15 minutes of experimentation, this is what I came up with. So we've done this before in other flies where we take a piece of chenille and singe the end and then use that as our body. But I wanted to incorporate something to darken the back of it, and there's little fuzzy fibers that I don't know if they're gills, I suppose. I wanted something to represent those in the detached body as well. So here we are. I have a needle in the vise. I've singed both ends of this thing, but I'm really using just the one end for now. And I'm going to get that chenille attached to the needle. So 2 or 3 wraps. I started to thread on the needle, come back to a point. I'm going to need about a 5/16 segment of detached body. So came back to that point, and here we are. I'm going to use some pheasant tail to darken the top of the that abdomen, I guess we'll call it for now. So this is not unlike other patterns where you make a detached body by wrapping on a needle, put a couple of wraps over the top, and then move forward underneath and wrap again. So here's what I'm doing. I kind of figured out I want about 4 segments. So I sneak up over, use a wrap or two to hold the chenille in place, and then um, catch the pheasant tail down on top. So move forward again, make another segment. I almost got brave there and was going to do that in all in one shot. So there we are. Make sure everything's centered. Get a couple of wraps on there to hold everything down. Come underneath, and so that's more or less the abdomen, the detached body. So I'll trim off the tips of the pheasant tail. Um, and then here we go. I'm coming in with UV resin, and I'm taking the extra second here to kind of rub this in the experimentation part of this. UV resin is not really a glue by itself, and while I was experimenting I was able to pull this apart, pull the pheasant tail from the chenille. So I'm kind of rubbing it in here, especially where the thread wraps go across. And we'll rotate it and put a little more UV resin on the other edge of where the pheasant tail um, lays down across the chenille. So a little more resin. We'll come forward and get everything kind of cemented in place. And again, I hesitate to call UV resin glue. It kind of works more by encapsulation, catching fibers, especially the brushy ones, and then hardening. So that's why the extra effort to rub those two together. So a little UV light and cure it. So there I darkened the tip of the abdomen with an orange marker. I saw a little shades of orange in the pictures of natura on the internet that I was looking up. So everything's kind of glued together. Now here's the other piece of magic here. So I'm going to trim that off the needle. You'll see, rotate it, and I'll come in with just a kind of a razor knife. And as I shave across there, it's going to leave stubs of the thread that I used to wrap around. Now the ones that were just around the needle will kind of peel away, and so I'll gently pull those away. And then the ones that were above and below the pheasant tail, those little pieces of thread, will kind of fuzz up and represent those gills. So that was a little bit of an epiphany I had when I was trying to create this body, and it looks like it's going to work out. So then, there's the bottom view, side, top view, and you'll see it's kind of dark and uh, more or less what I wanted. So I'm going to tie this on a size 14 Tiemco hook, 2457, and let's swap out the needle and put a hook in the vise. So I'll mention this one more time. You'll see the little line I drew on the knob, the adjustment knob for the vise. I like to snug it up and then back it off about a quarter turn. That makes sure that when I squeeze the lever, I get the same tension on the hook every time, and I won't be damaging the vise or having my hook slip on me. So as an ex-machinist, that drives me nuts, and I like everything to be a repeatable process. So here we started some thread on the hook. I think this is just 8/0 uni thread, and it's kind of a tan color. All right, so there'll be some magic here too. Well, I don't want to call it magic. This was kind of an oops, or a change my mind. As I told you, I'm making this up as I go. So I thought I wanted some dangly bits to kind of come out the back of the fly to represent legs or something. And so I tied in 4 strands of pheasant tail, and then I'm going to add a ball of dubbing right over the top of that. So the dubbing is, I think it's Caddis Life Cycles. So it's kind of like SLF, or it's got a little antron or a little shininess to it. And it's in kind of a golden amber color. So I was going to bend up those legs and kind of make them represent legs. But so here we are. We're tying in our detached body, the extension or abdomen. And we'll snip off the waist, butt ends of the pheasant tail first, and then the chenille. Saw it move a little bit as I trimmed it, so I wanted to make sure I put a few more wraps on there to kind of hold things in place. Alright, so I'm pretty sure it's not going to pull out now. And I'm going to turn it up a little bit in the vise to make sure that as I finish up on the head, things don't slip off the end. And I see that the abdomen rotate a little bit as I tied it in. So we rotate it back, and off camera I put a couple more wraps on there to make sure that it stayed that way. Trim out the fuzzies. And then here I'm thinking about putting the eyes in, right? So this was about a 3/4 inch segment of 15-pound monofilament, held in those same tweezers and then melted with the lighter until I got a nice little round eye on each side. I don't think caddis need to have eyes, but I'm somewhere between a realistic pattern here and something. I don't mind if the fish chew on it, so I don't want to put a ton of effort into it, but I want it to look like a fairly good representation of a caddis pupa. So we get the eyes in place with some cross wraps and a wrap underneath, parachute wrap you may call that. And I was about to add more dubbing, and I realized I don't like where those legs were. So off camera I snipped them off, so now they're gone. And I'm going to put dangly bits or legs back in, but I'm going to tie in 2 on each side. And I think this is a better place to kind of attach them. And I want them to be about the same length as that abdomen. So again, going with pheasant tail fibers. And all right, so I'm liking that, and I'm going to kind of wrap forward to make sure they don't come out. snip off the excess. And there's a couple of things now. So I'm going to add some dubbing. And I want some kind of tent wing on here. If you look at that picture, if you go back and pause on that picture, you'll see they kind of have a wing that's emerging, and it kind of projects down each side of the bug. So I'm going to make a bit of a tent wing to cover that up. But I want a thicker body. I want to fatten that up right there where I'm going to tie that tent wing in. So here we are. I folded a piece of duck quill in half and used some head cement to glue it. And then I cut a V in the back. Now I'm going to kind of angle that into place. I have to reach almost the bend of the hook or somewhere thereabouts. I'll get a couple of wraps on it and pull towards me to cinch it down, hold it in place. So I kind of like how that went. I was going to adjust it, but it's held in pretty tight. So. And we'll reach in and snip off that excess close. So it's about this point I'm deciding I need some dangly bits up front. They have more than just those couple of legs I let hang out the back. And probably some kind of shell back of sorts, or that case or that head that would move forward. So I'm going to go with pheasant tail for that again. Now I have about 10 fibers there, but I'm going to snip out the middle at the end. So I have them bound down, and I'll jump to the front of the eyes and throw a few wraps up there. And then back to adding dubbing. I was contemplating moving things around there. Again, first time through. If I'd have tied 4 or 5 of these flies, the routine may look a little more deliberate, but it's kind of fun to make this up as you go. So let's get some cross wraps around the eyes to fill in the gaps and make a bulbous head. And when that's said and done, I'll be behind the eyes, and that's where I'm going to finish this fly too. So I'm going to fold those 10 pheasant tail fibers back over. Make sure with my fingernail, make sure they're smoothed out and cover some of that head. They darken it up a little bit. And so I've got a couple of wraps on those, and I'm going to whip finish here. So I put the glue in a thread, which I like to do when I'm not against the metal surface, like behind the hook eye. And we'll do a 4 or 5 turn whip finish. Snug it up and snip off the thread. Now I'm going to come in. I think I wanted on purpose to leave a little bit of that stubble from the pheasant tail fibers coming back. I think that adds a little bit of something there. And then I have too many dangly bits, so we'll take the center of those the tips of those pheasant tail fibers out. And just for insurance purposes, we'll put another drop of head cement on the top. And I'm going to call it done. So I think this pattern shows promise. Some of the techniques may be interesting to apply elsewhere. Thanks for watching this to the end. And if you want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon. And until next time, be safe.